Live on Newzroom Afrika, channel 405. Thanks so much for staying with us. I'm Ayanda Nyati. So, Viacom CBS International Studios has recently launched a global initiative that's aiming to counteract racism, bias, stereotypes, and hate. Under the banner, Writers' Room, Beyond the Binary Fluid Voices, Viacom is inviting young African writers to apply to their program. The program itself is aiming to create content by giving preference to marginalized groups in that application process. For more on this initiative, let's bring in South African award-winning film director, writer, and actor Tishiwe Zikubu, who is the head writer for this program, actually. And Tishiwe, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for joining us here on Newzroom Afrika. I'm so interested in the decision to incorporate writers in an attempt to try to push back against things like racism, stereotypes, and hate. But we've often heard that typically it's important to empower people who tell stories in order to shift the dial around these forms of discrimination.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on. It is very important that the arts, that culture forms an integral part of shaping society, because that is how art works. From time immemorial, that is how people's mindsets are built, restructured and coordinated, is by what they take in, is by entertainment. It has been used for evil, even in trying to teach people how to unlove another person, how to be discriminatory. Film, cinema, entertainment has played that role before. So it's very important that we use filmmaking, that we use movies, that we use drama series to portray society in a way that shapes our understanding, so that social change occurs. Because, I see the value that is in panels. However, it is those spaces where people are just casually taking in stories, because we're humans. We like to see human stories. Those narratives shape us. That emotional impact that stories have on us shape how we see the world and how we see other people. So, for example, since our program is spearheading and undoing the sidelining of genderqueer and gender diverse individuals, it would be a great benefit and will be a great tool if society at large is able to take in gender diversity in content, in cinema, in entertainment, and use that as a tool of reshaping the way minds are set. When we see characters who portray racism, you can even find yourself agreeing with some problematic sentiments because you are in love with the character. So why not make characters that open up our understanding into a more inclusive society, and one that celebrates the freedoms of all people?
You're absolutely right. In the past, though, the industry has come under fire for, yes, conceptualizing these characters, but having people who are not part of those marginalized groups actually write life into them, for lack of a better term. Speak to us about how this particular initiative is at least hoping to work through that complexity. In other words, it's under the banner of nothing about us without us type of thinking.
Absolutely. It is quite offensive and even annoying for myself and for many of the LGBTQIA plus community, and for the gender diverse community, to see characters portrayed in an untruthful manner, just to tick a box, just to have the token queer person. It's even a further stretch because we don't see gender diverse characters at hardly. There's an extreme sidelining of gender queer characters, of gender diverse characters on screen. And when they do appear, they are very stereotyped according to how people have hatefully portrayed them, or they are just there for the under the guise of entertainment as a laugh, but you don't see them as three-dimensional characters. What is most important for me as part of this writer's room is the development and story of human narratives, of character-driven narratives, and that we can then mold these characters to be fleshed out to reflect a human, because what the othering has done, and by the othering I mean the idea that we live in a binary society where only the genders of male and female exist, and then everyone else is shoved into a box of other if recognized at all. What that has done is it hasn't given room to see then the so-called others as actual human beings who live, suffer, enjoy, prosper, thrive, desire, like everybody else. So part of the work of this writers' room is the unothering of gender diverse people by gender diverse writers. It is the same thing as when you have, and we've been fighting this as African storytellers for decades, where our stories have always been told through a Western lens, where you have white Europeans or Americans telling the story of slavery, telling the story of black empowerment, even, or black triumph. But it has to come from us. Only black people can speak on black people's truths, because that is our lived experience. And it is the same then with gender diverse, gender queer people, and queer people as well, because these terms are different. People don't even understand the nuances of these things. Yeah. Even within the queer community, there's so much educating that needs to happen about who and what we are, because everything is so black and white. Everything lives in boxes. So then the onus is on gender diverse peoples to individually allow themselves into spaces of expression, of self-expression, because I'm a gender non-binary identifying person, but my gender non-binary expression is not the same as the next person. Right. So there's not one blanket way of being non-binary, of being gender fluid. So the onus is on individuals to then create characters, worlds, spaces in entertainment, in filmmaking that color the same way cis people, men and women, are different types of people. Let us then voice who we are on screen. Yeah. And also, the stories themselves will not always just be centered on queerness, because once you put a lens on it and the story is about my being queer, about my being non-binary, that's an othering in itself. Make it a story about my being human. Make it a story about my lived experience in the world. The program highlights social issues and social impact, the struggles that we face as people, which is what we're all going through. Issues of equity.
If I can come in there to share, if you don't mind.
Something that we're all going through.
Yeah,
World health, of climate change.
Apologies for interrupting you there.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure that we don't lose anybody. You know, I've always found that in conversations like the one we're having now, oftentimes language becomes a serious barrier. We know that the experience of queer people is not one that is exclusive to those who are able to even describe the different forms of gender expression that exist in the world. As the head of this writers' room, help me understand how you're hoping or working to tackle that particular issue, the matters of language. In other words, there is somebody who lives in Ngutu who might be experiencing these things, who is not perhaps necessarily able to access the language that is being used in English, but would definitely be empowered by people who be able to describe their lived experience in a way that they understand.
Absolutely. One of the beautiful things about story is it gives you the license to create. When you can create worlds, you can create language. All language is created. These terms that we're speaking of 100 years ago, even in the English language, did not exist. Terms like genderqueer happened with the LGBTQIA struggle to uprise in this century, in the past 60 years. So these terms have been created by individuals who needed something that identifies them and honors and respects them. And in the same breath, in our own native tongues, those terms can be created. And it is already, the foundation is already there. Because, for example, in many African tongues, there is no pronoun. There is no gender pronoun. He, she does not exist. When I say Ayanda went to the store, but I want to take out the Ayanda, and I say he went to the store. If I say that in isiZulu, I say uhambile waya estolo. If Ayanda was female identifying, I would still say Ayanda uhambile waya estolo. Gender pronouns don't exist in most African native tongues. So the foundation is already telling us that as Africans historically, we come from a society that respected humans beyond gender. We were already beyond the binary. The binary was not created by Africans. It is un-African to create a society that believes that only male and female exist or are right or correct. So I don't see that as a challenge, because then we just go to the truth of the fact that those pronouns don't exist in our tongues. So actually that's an indicator of the fact that we respect every form of gender. The society is not cis, and our language already reflects that our society as humanity is not a cis-het society. And now, should we, for the purpose of storytelling, have to create terms such as gender non-binary, gender fluid, gender diverse, gender non-conforming, transgender? Dictionaries evolve, terms are formed. Words such as science, for example. In Zulu, you say science, but if you go to Zulu linguists, there have been words that have been formed and that can also be tracked back to antiquity that actually did exist, that are then unearthed.
Right.
So let's do that unearthing. The onus is on us. It's the erasure that caused the absence of these words. It's not that the concept didn't exist in our society.
Absolutely. Fascinating. Very quickly, Tishiwe, if people, writers, want to get involved, is that opportunity still available? How do they make the most of it as quickly as you can?
Yes, absolutely. I will try and be as quick as I can. I am inviting African writers who are citizens of an African Anglophone country. So even if you're in the diaspora, please apply. Applications close on the 19th of November. This is open to experienced writers, aspiring writers, beginner writers, and non-writers who feel they have a story to tell and just want to share in a storytelling experience and feel that they are passionate about social change. Follow Beyond the Binary Fluid Voices pages at Binary Fluid on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for more details, where you'll also find the application portal as well as the website.
Tishiwe Zikubu, thanks very much indeed for your time. Really do appreciate it. Tishiwe is a South African award-winning film director, writer, and actor. Once again, thanks very much indeed.